Well, I've got a chap on the show today, Mr. Craig Brown, who I got to meet through the last conference. It's a great conference that happens around Australia every year on the topics of lean, agile, and systems thinking. Craig's a chap that whenever I asked him a question or we got into a conversation, he really pushed my thinking every time. And Craig's organisation, Everest, has just been globally recognised in one of the most really hard to achieve awards you can get right now, which is about true respect, autonomy for people, particularly frontline and these zero distance companies. We're going to talk about this in the show. The show goes into a lot of good information for organisations that think about right now, particularly with the world, the volatility and the complexities that really everyone's dealing with now compared to potentially the past where maybe there was more stability in some realms. I'd recommend for further information and reading, look at the last conference that happens around the country in Australia every year. You can get involved virtually. And also, we'll put some resources on the Enterprise Excellence podcast around HEA that we all mentioned, also the Henry Mintzberg resources, and a few other bits of information that you can download for further readings. Let's get to the show.
Welcome to the Enterprise Excellence podcast, where we share knowledge from global experts in how to create high-performance, agile cultures of continuous improvement and innovation. Cultures where employees wake up smiling and excited to go to work and make a difference. Cultures where leaders feel they have the time to proactively serve the growth of themselves and others.
I'm your host, Brad Jevons, coming to you from Brisbane, Australia. By improving our organisations, we create a better future for generations to come. An economy where our children and grandchildren can experience the joy of owning their first home. An environment where they can enjoy holidays on clean beaches and marvel at the beauty of nature. A future where they feel safe, respected, and empowered to make a difference at work, bringing that energy home to their families and communities. This show is proudly brought to you by the Enterprise Excellence Community and Group, which is focused on helping organisations create this better future through this podcast, our community, where you can engage with global experts, tour best practice sites, and also our workshops focused on the most important topics to truly help your organisation improve into the future for those it serves. Visit enterpriseexcellencegroup.com.au to learn more. Welcome to episode 190 of the Enterprise Excellence Podcast.
It is such a pleasure to have Mr. Craig Brown on the show with us today. Craig is the founder of Everest Engineering, a globally awarded people-first organisation that builds digital products for companies all over the world. Craig is also a co-founder of the last conference, which stands for Lean, Agile, Systems Thinking, together with Ed Wong, who's previously been on the show. Today we're going to explore with Craig the development and growth of Everest, a bold, people-first, community-building digital products for those who do things differently. Let's get into the episode. Craig, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Brad. How are you?
Yeah, real good, mate. I appreciate it. So looking forward to the chat.
Yeah.
Craig, why did you initially set up Everest? This people-first, community-centric organisation just helping people program and develop all over the world.
In the years beforehand, I've been working at a software product company called Aconex, and I think it was probably one of the best performing, highest performing organizations I've come across in Australia. It was globally successful in its niche, and it had this kind of magical essence, the way people worked together and respected each other, and all the good things that high performing organizations do, like a commitment to kind of always doing better. No matter how good you're doing, it's not good enough. You got to do better again. And but like enjoying the people you work with while you're reaching for these aspirations. And it flowed from the leaders of that company right through to the frontline workers everywhere in all the different departments. And so it's pretty good. And one day, Oracle came along and made the owners of the company an offer they couldn't refuse. And so that chapter ended, right? Nothing against Oracle, but I didn't want to be working in a remote office on the other side of the world, in a small division in a bigger company, right? I just want to be more in the steering part of the organization. So with a prompt from my friend and co-founder of Everest in India, Ranganathan, he called me up one day and said, the thing that we seem to be good at is leading and growing teams of people that make software products. So why don't we make that the thing that we do next? And he was actually having a holiday at base camp of Mount Everest at the time, and sent me some photos and called me up and told me about his idea. And then, we chatted about it for probably only about a week or so. And then, within a week, we're like, yep, let's do it. We had work activities that we had to finish in that acquisition. So we wrapped those things up over a few months. And then we ran away and started a new company. And then we hired a few people that we've worked with before. And one thing led to another. And here we are.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
I know it's been an amazing journey. Like, you've scaled so much in such a short period of time. But
Right.
one question I've got is like,
interesting times as well, Brad. Yeah. Just a tip for any wannabe founders out there: like, don't start a business just before a pandemic followed by a global recession, followed by one specifically acute in the tech industry. Just don't do that.
Well, that just makes it all much better what you've achieved, mate. It's been great. But right. with the journey, I want to get to this latest achievement in a second. But like, with the organization, what led you to focus on bold, people-first community for Everest?
It does go back to the Aconex thing. Like, again, what we had going on at that company was a very interesting organizational culture. I wouldn't say it was perfectly unique, but it was very rare. And again, this kind of thread of values from the people that started the business through to everyone that worked there. It was like, we can't be successful unless everyone's contributing. We don't expect perfection, but we do expect the pursuit of excellence. There's this, product companies are a bit different to service companies. They're more mission driven, I think, but like, there was meaningfulness in the work. And so, people were expected to be challenging, I think, rather than just order takers. And I think also, looking back, there was an embracing of neurodiversity in the workplace as well. Right. So, the dysfunctions that come out of, neurodiverse people working with neurotypical people were pretty well smoothed over for the most part. Nothing's perfect, of course, but that's part of the ethos as well. Like, perfection's not the goal, like continuous improvement is. So, these things were pretty rare. And so when we finished that chapter at Aconex and decided to do something next, because they were rare, we thought that there was something that we should do with them. And so we just tried to create a new organization that picked up those things. And then we added some extra things that we thought were important, because now Ranganathan and I are the founders. And so we get to put some salt on the dish.
Take it to that next level. So, mate, what were the 2-3 key things that you did to be able to establish this bold people first community in the organization? Like, what would you say if you're talking to our listeners and you're like, okay, I learned it at my previous company, I learned some great stuff, but these are the things we focused on?
Well, I'll get to the heart of it, but before I do, I'll just talk about a lesson. Like, many years ago, probably in the 2006, 2007 period, like, I was studying management. Like, I did a master's degree, in construction project management. But I was working in IT management at the time. And I was learning about all these theories. Like, the Agile stuff was starting to emerge, and we were playing around and tinkering with those ideas, picking stuff out of the business books as well. And what I would do is, not all at once, I wouldn't try to pick up all these big frameworks, but I'd pick up one idea and just try to dial it right up to kind of 10 out of 10 and see what would happen. And I found that, like, ratcheting it up gradually, like, you would kind of like think you're doing good, but you wouldn't see the results. And then you dial it up a bit more and you wouldn't see the results. And it's only when you kind of dial it right up to the top volume that you would actually see the results turn up. But when you saw the results turn up, they were amazing, right? And any one of those things would make you outperform your peers in the organizations very quickly. And so if you just start stacking those things on top, like, the way you can kind of get to great performance just becomes very apparent, right? It's about not being half-assed. It's about, like, applying these concepts and ideas with a lot of rigor. And so in the management literature and in all the case studies that we read about and the blogs and the podcasts and so forth, we hear about all these people going, take a people first approach, look after your employees, they'll look after your customers, yada, 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 all that sort of stuff, right? But do we do it 10 out of 10, right? Or do we say we're going to do it and then kind of try to do it, but get busy and get focused on other things, right? So if we just in our organization, if we just set a benchmark of like, you know, always respect people and always trust people at the front line that, you know, are trying to do their best. And yeah, everyone's got their limits. They don't know things, they don't have experience and stuff like that, right? That's cool, right? Like that means that they're maybe not nailing the job, but they're nailing the intent. And so if they're nailing the intent and then they get support, they're going to do a great job, right? And then if we just make that an ethos that everyone in the organization brings to the table, right? Like it's not linear, it's exponential, right? And so it grows and grows and grows. And that means that when you have a specific event or a specific project, or, you know, the details, they come, they go, like sometimes they're great, sometimes they're not great. We're totally not perfect. We do make mistakes, right? But at a portfolio level or at a group level, right, you actually see consistent excellence through taking that approach.
Yeah, I love it. Respect for people, but I really sense to what you're saying, Craig, is that continuous improvement, not just doing something because it looks good at the moment and then forgetting about it or losing focus, really looking to ratchet it and get better and better. And respect for people is a core one at the heart of it.
Oh, right. And again, back to what does great look like, right? So, you know, how do we learn what excellence looks like, right? So one, you don't get it from reading books or hearing other people's story. They're a signal, so they're great because they can tell you the direction, but they can't tell you the distance, right? And so the way you find out what really great performance looks like I think in any craft skill, including management, is well, there's two paths, right? Like one is work with great people, and so you just see it, and so you can kind of mimic that and try to copy it, right? That'll take you to a threshold, but it's still a limited threshold. The other one is like, yeah, it's a mix of performance anxiety and curiosity, right? And am I doing good enough? I better do better, right? Or is there better I can do? I wonder, let's try a thing, right? And so those two things can, you know, kind of help you just continuously push those boundaries and find, you know, the upper limits of what's reasonable.
Yeah, and I love it. And in that conversation, mate, I really sense that piece on bold, which really drives that be bold, but the people first community, they respect. It's those two words really tell what you're talking about to me.
Yeah, you know, like, I mean, we manage, I don't know what, we got 60 something teams at the moment. And if something weird is happening on one of the teams, you know, good, weird, bad, weird, I don't know. Like, how am I going to know? Like, I'm at least 2 steps removed from it, right? I'm not across the details. So if somebody on the frontline team says this is the situation, you have to listen to them and you have to take time to understand their perspective on things. And I think, yeah, maybe they're calling you for help. Maybe the customer's grumbling about something. Maybe the customer's saying, hey, this is really interesting, I want more of it. We have these puzzles sometimes where we do, you know, amazing work, and our customers say, wow, like, you know, that was beyond my wildest expectations. Like, it's so funny. We get that feedback so frequently. It's just kind of normal now, right? But we scratch the surface and we try to find it. And, you know, like, what in the software practices or the product practices make that true? Like, we definitely pay attention to good craft skills and all that sort of stuff. But like, often it just comes down to, like, the superficial version of it is like people turn up to video meetings with their cameras on, right? But the roots underneath it are people want to represent their best selves by showing that they're interested in the other person. So they turn the camera on, right? So that you can, when you're talking to each other, get a sense of feedback of whether they're being interested or not. And yeah, and asking questions, right? And sometimes asking questions that might feel silly or embarrassing to people, but like, they just go, cool, it's we have to ask, right? Somebody else might want to know and they might be too shy. Another interesting thing about the team is like, I do these one-on-ones each week with different people, and yeah, just kind of randomly connected through the organization. And over the last few months, I've been asking people, what's the special sauce that makes everything good around here? And they've been telling me it's this narrative around leadership behaviors, right? Like, we're all expected to be leaders, but one of the behaviors in our leadership model, and this will come back if we talk about that award, but one of the things about our leadership model is like, it's not somebody's job, it's everybody's job. But if you turn up and act like a leader all the time, you suffocate the space, right? And so you don't create space for emergent leaders to grow into, right? So the dominant paradigm of leaders is they act more like a safety net and guardrails, right? And they create spaces, and, like, you know, a question will be asked and they don't answer it, right? But what they might do is they might look around the room or look across the video call and just go, Brad, what do you think? Right. And elicit your leadership for a moment. And then through those, through doing that regularly and the feedback loops that come from it, people become more confident, people start asserting their leadership. And so leadership starts to look like a bunch of meerkats popping their heads up over the hill, right? And then disappearing again. And then so leadership can come from anywhere depending on what leadership is needed at that moment.
Yeah, I love that, mate. I love that. It just correlates so much. I love the fact that you and I are talking before the show. I won't, and that leading from the front, or you're really about learning with the one-on-ones you're doing, but then also that value of everyone's leaders, but leaders is about helping others lead and shine and contribute. The meerkat analogy is beautiful.
That's I know.
Such a great. It's great. So mate, on it, I want to get to that point now that you guys have recently been globally recognized in such a short time of being a company going through tough times, but globally recognized for what you've achieved. Do you mind explaining for the listeners what that global recognition was, mate, and how it sort of played out?
Well, there's the white goods company Hire, have been studied for the last 15 years, I suppose, as an innovative business, right? So, in the 70s and 80s, people were like pulling stories out of Toyota and going, there's something special going on here. And I think Hire is the company that is that today, right? And they've got some innovations in culture, similar to what we've been talking about, but probably more large scale and more formal. But also they've got some ideas around structure. So, companies should be contained to a certain size. And, so they've got this kind of, their org chart's a bunch of bubbles, right? And each of those bubbles is a business in itself, right? And sometimes those bubbles are part of a supply chain of other Hire business units, and sometimes they're independent, and sometimes they're a mix of servicing Hire or being serviced by Hire, but also open ecosystem type stuff. So what that means is, there's more accountability, but there's also more entrepreneurism built into these organizations, right? Because, if you're a 10,000 people organization, right, the level of entrepreneurism tends to kind of be limited to people that have the levers to pull, right? But if you're an organization of 50 people, everyone's got a potential to make a difference. And so some sort of scaling of this going on, right? So rather than being like one 80,000 person company, their philosophy is like, we'd be better off being 81,000 person companies, right? And so each of those businesses have their own mission, purpose, local version of their organizational culture and so forth. But, they're all out there to make a business and be successful. And that open ecosystem model holds them to more account. And then there's layers and layers and layers of stuff in this, right? So, you can go read more about the Hire stuff, and no doubt you'll get one of their characters on this podcast one day. Regardless, like there's also an outfit that are kind of attached to, I think, the London School of Economics called Thinkers 50. And they're a whole bunch of people that you read in Harvard Business Review and characters like, journalists for the, London Times and stuff like that. And so they're a think tank group, and they've decided to put an award together. And the awards series is called 0DX, which is zero distance, which is an idea pulled out of the Hire stuff. So what's the distance between you and your customers and you and your employees? It should be zero, like you're all in it together, right? Co-creation, limit the boundaries, get better outcomes, all that sort of stuff. They are associated to a bunch of, consulting organizations around the world who went around doing a bunch of case studies. And here in Australia, we got picked up as one of the case studies. And so we and another outfit called Chorus, which do health and care work in Perth, got summoned to Qingdao. And we went through a very weird and wonderful 3 days of events and interviews and storytelling and hanging out with these people from all around the world that are doing amazing things in their businesses. And eventually we end up on stage and getting these awards. And it was a bit surreal. It was a bit surreal because here we are, just here in Australia, and our team members in Australia, Malaysia, and India, and grinding away, doing our work, fighting the challenges of the tech recession that we're working through and all that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden you get spotted and you're put with I think it was 30 odd companies, and recognized for being some of the most innovative and creative organizations in the world, right? And so, it's great. The specific award we got was for contribution to the ecosystem, right? So the idea being we're innovative in the way we work, but the the innovation kind of cascades out to the ecosystem that we operate in. Back to Hire's kind of business model, like zero distance has been a big deal for them for the last few years. And then they've just decided, like, now that they're kind of, achieving that outcome, they want to ratchet it up. And so their next horizon is zero boundaries, right? So, sure, we can be close, but actually, like, let's remove the wall between your organization and mine, and like, let's actually just be one. Right. And we're all working towards one goal. Now, all this stuff is very lofty, right? They make fridges and air conditioners and stuff like that, right? But you see it in the way they work, right? And you see it in the way that people, we went for a tour of one of the warehouses. We went for a tour of a factory. We saw a retail outlet and all this sort of stuff. And like, it did remind, like, even though they're a gigantic global massive company, like, it did remind me of like that small software company, Aconex, small, 1,000 odd people, right? Where everyone kind of had this, not religious, but like, passionate commitment to the company mission, right? Like, it was worth doing. It was something that was meaningful. And there was like a reciprocal loyalty to the company and the company back to the people, right? And again, back to that respect and all that sort of stuff, right? I think that's the platform that we're working with. Sorry.
Yeah, I love it, mate. But Craig, like for an award to win, mate, that's on another level. That's true respect for people, and then the connection to customer in that sort of that approach for that award is amazing, mate. Congratulations, especially on a global scale. And I know what Haya and others are achieving, and you're achieving. That's true, amazing, mate. I think it's what we all aspire to when it comes to enterprise excellence.
Yeah. It's pretty cool to get recognized for it. Like, it just feels like the right way to operate. Like, there's the logistics and the day-to-day stuff and all this, but this foundation of like how to make people work well together, right, is by making the space for people to work well together. And there's details and methods and technique and all that sort of stuff, but like, it's pretty fundamental. Like, we're all humans and we all need attention and we all need support. And none of us are perfect. We all have our good days and we all have our bad days and all that sort of stuff, right? So if you can just create an environment that like tolerates those ripples, right, and creates enough support and stability for people, but also sometimes chaos for people, because sometimes people like chaos, sometimes they like stability, right? So, just create the right environment so that people can thrive, right? And that's the job of management.
Yeah, I love it. Craig, earlier today, I was thinking about a question I wanted to throw at you, mate, because I want to get your response on this, mate. Like, you think about a lot of the discussion in the areas that I float in around the world on these spaces. People are comparing like Agile to like traditional project management, PMBOK and Prince 2. Like the position on, it seems the system of Agile is what we stand up as a hero. But I know we really focus in on the processes of Agile, or the processes of PMBOK and Prince 2. Do you mind explaining your views on which ones on that position and the importance there?
One of the characters that was over in Qingdao the other week was Gary Hamel, right? So, lauded management academic, right? And I was asking him, like, I don't know how it came up, I can't quite remember, but like, I was asking him about like the things that he thought mattered most in management theory in the last 100 years or so. And he threw out this line that was like, basically three quarters of all productivity gains have come out through management innovation in the last 100 years, right? And then on the back of that, he mentioned something else as well. I can't remember it, but it was like the higher stuff, the lean stuff, and the agile stuff is like three of the four biggest transformations in the collective industry of work, right? So more innovation has come out of those three territories, plus the fourth one I can't remember, which is probably like customer centeredness or something like that than anywhere else, right? And so that's powered three quarters of the innovation that we've got, right? So it's definitely not nothing, right? We've reached a stage, I think, in the world where Agile is, people are pointing fingers and calling names and all that sort of stuff. And so you get this like my Agile and your Agile stuff starting to emerge, right? And so I think that means just we're in this commodification stage where, the kind of the badges and the buckets and the training courses and whatever, they are what they are, right? But But we can deconstruct the big deal things, and we can kind of look at the specifics, and we can go, cool, what really matters? And so in the world of software development, right, there's a whole bunch of agile stuff that has just been synthesized into software engineering, right? So there's things like testing your code, automated tests, continuous deployment, right? Like, getting close to the customer. So you're actually having conversations, not just working. Remember the old days when we had like Word docs of like 70, 80 pages with requirement specs, right? You don't see them anymore, right? So yeah, I think productivity and efficiency is one side of it. And I think a lot of the techniques address productivity and efficiency, and I think they matter. But then there's also a lot of stuff around culture that people talk about. And I think they don't know what they're doing, right? Like, I mean, some people do and they get great results, and then other people try to copy it. And it goes back to like, what does 10 out of 10 look like? What does 4 out of 10 look like, right? And so if you're doing the 4 out of 10 version, you say you're doing, I don't know, psychological safety in the workplace, right? But like, are you really, right? And so, can you get to the 10 out of 10? And so I think for me, now is the time to deconstruct like the big badge of Agile and look at the parts, and then go back to, cool, let's look at how we run meetings. Let's look at how we listen to each other. Let's look at how we define what good is. Let's look at like our methods of continuous improvement, right? And just kind of pull those things into parts, and then just focus on getting those things right one at a time. So, continue to go on your Agile transformations and Agile journeys and stuff. But I think if you take a commoditized path, you're going to get a commoditized result. But there's still a ton of value to be extracted from these ideas. But also probably there's going to be intersecting idea vectors, right, that are covering similar or the same territory, but they're packaged differently, right? And so this zero distance stuff is a good example, right? Like I think, for me, I think this concept of zero distance and zero boundaries, right, really leans into stuff that I learned about back in my project management days, where, if you're working with 2 or 3 suppliers and you've got customers outside the organization and you're doing stuff, or even if you're doing internal IT stuff and you've got multiple departments, there's all these kind of org chart boundaries and like, tentative commitment to the project and all that sort of stuff. But if you can actually make people feel like they're one team, you get the results. And so bringing people together and giving them a shared sense of purpose and priority will help, like, get great results. And, you can be a PMI project manager doing that. You can be an Agile product owner doing that. You can be whatever, right? Like, it doesn't really matter about the process. It's a degree of structure, right? Like, we're all one team. We see ourselves as one team, and that structure comes through leadership, right? And, and say projects or products or whatever, they can be temporary or sub organizations within bigger organizations or whatever, right? And so you turn up as a leader, right? And you've got a job to do, which is to get everyone on the same page and achieve a mission, right? So, learn all the methods, right? Interleave your Prince2 and your Kanban and put them all together and like make the best thing you can with what you've got. That's what I reckon.
Yeah. And Craig, am I picking up too, mate, that like without that approach to leadership, which is about respect for people and really working to have, zero distance and connecting people as much as you can, no matter what you do, can be difficult?
Yeah, well, like you can be successful, but also be inefficient. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the intersection of right place and right time, right? Like if you're that, you can be the most dysfunctional organization in the world and still succeed, right? So, but you can succeed easier if you lead and manage well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and by the same token, you can be in an industry that's in decline or under stress, or in a company that's like, in trouble or whatever, right? And it can be hard, or it can be easier, right? It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but which method do you want? Do you want the easiest or do you want the hardest, right? And so I think if you pay attention to good practices around leadership and management, you'll get your goals achieved with less stress.
Yeah, I'm sensing too there, Craig, like, do you want to be an organization that's bold and really pushing forward and heading towards greatness? Or do you just want to be okay and just soak up the money that you can make currently?
Yeah, well, there's a bit of an archetype out there. There's 3 types of CEOs, right? The salesperson, the finance person, and the engineer. And the salesperson is when you're brand new and you don't quite have a product yet, and that you just got to go sell people on an idea, right? And the finance person is like when you're in decline and you're just trying to extract money until you finally go out of business. And the if you're in growth mode, like if you're actually like a sustainable growing business, like you want the engineer running things, right? And I think if you just apply that kind of thinking and you look at the organizational culture you've got, like you'll start to see, like leadership flows from the top and all that sort of stuff. You'll start to see the behaviors and whether they're fit for where you sit in the marketplace, right? So, yeah, sure, maybe, I don't know, maybe your industry is on its way out and you're going to just sort of extract as much value for shareholders in the next 15 years and then it's going to disappear, right? That could be a thing, right? But most of us want to work in organizations that have got long-lived purpose. And so we probably want to take more of that engineering approach. And I think engineering isn't just about processes and systems and structures. It's also about people, right? Because engineers are smart people, often weird people. And so accommodating smart, weird people is the path to success.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's such a good comment. Greg, I had an event the other week too that I was part of, and Centis, the CEO of Centis, which is a safety organization, he was talking on positive safety, how you truly get safety. And a lot of it, mate, just came back to respect for people, like actually empowering people and involving people in owning safety and getting better at safety, where a lot of safety is driven in a hierarchical type of position. And that event just really highlighted to me that if we truly want to keep people safe in high risk environments, we have to go to zero distance, because who's going to get hurt needs to own that position and be empowered to make a difference there, because otherwise you're not conscious. You command and control, you're following things for the sake of it, and you can get hurt. But yeah, that was a pivotal event for me, because my brain always kept swinging back to, can you achieve things through a hierarchy and the dominance? And like you've just said, mate, you can suck money out of a business through it and just keep. But when it comes to safety, I don't know that you can take that dictatorial top-down approach and truly keep people safe if you're in a high risk. And that was a real pivotal moment for me, that event.
There's something around what you're talking about to me reminds me of, did you ever read or study like Henry Mintzberg's management theory back in the day?
No, I'll get onto that.
So he wrote this paper in the 70s called Structures in Five, and I'll send you a link to it later. And in it, he kind of posited that there's 5 different organizational kind of personas or archetypes. And he iterated on that over a course of a few years, and it changed into 7, and maybe it expanded out of that. I don't know, but one of the things he highlights is that there's the strategic apex, there's middle management, and there's the front line, right? And then there's this 4th part of an organization, which is the technocracy, right? We might call it the bureaucracy, right? And they're the process controllers and process people. And like archetypically, they might be your finance department or your HR department or PMO or whatever, like people that are all about policies and procedures and standardization, right? And, when Mintzberg wrote his thing, he just kind of matched the organization type to the environment and said, if you're in this type of environment, you need, you're going to perform better if you're this type of organization shape. And where a large technocracy plays is where there's stability, right? And so, in 1995, you might say, cool, that's like banks and telcos and insurance companies. And in 2010, we might have said, cool, that's government departments, right? But the space that occupies continues to shrink, right? And so everyone's got to perform and everyone's got to be innovative these days, or they get replaced. And so, I think that means that the pattern of leveraging your technocracy in the organization, or the bureaucracy process stabilization part, has really got to shift. The way we think about it is actually that's a transitional thing for us to all get through, right? You do want a degree of process control. You do want a degree of stability and all that sort of stuff. But the idea of trying to centralize it and manage your whole organization through a simple set of standards doesn't play when you've got these different functional units or different business units that are trying to dance with a chaotic environment that they're operating in, right? So some of them are entrepreneurial and trying to do new things, right? Some of them are working in industries that are being disrupted. Some of them, there's like regulatory changes that are happening and they need to change how they operate, right? This back office technocracy that's trying to service all those business units at the same time just locks everyone down into the lowest common denominator, and that holds you back, right? So you're better off pushing that process control and policy control forward into the business unit so that they can control. The controls still matter. You still don't want to break the law. You still want to manage your risk. You still want to do all those things, but you want to put it in a place where it's closer to the outcomes and closer to the customer.
Yeah, too true. I even was thinking as you're talking about those examples, Craig, like a lot of those heavy industry sites that are what was that word? Technical or technocracy? Technocracy. Sorry about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Even their frontline crews are battling with old equipment. Like even the chaos just comes from the age of the sites. And they're not in stability because the equipment's so old and it's been maintained so poorly because it's been tried to be governed through some central control system that actually doesn't work. Yeah. And even that basic thing just creates chaos. So they're in that world where the people at the front are the ones that know. And it's amazing.
You might want to replace some piece of equipment for like $30,000, right? But because the central budgeting process is set up the way it is, you don't have decision-making rights on that $30,000 thing. Where at the front line, you go, all right, cool. You know what? We'll cut the $30,000 out of the end of your Christmas party, right? And we'll do it because it's important to us, right? So it might be a trivially easy decision to make, but you can't make it.
Yeah, too true. That's a great example. Greg, I really enjoyed the conversation, mate. And like you said, this is an emerging and really growing area of thought because the technocracies are struggling, and it's a path that is not as common anymore and becoming less and less. But mate, what advice would you give to a leader or a business improvement transformation leader, who are a lot of our listeners, if they're going, okay, what should I do here? We are more of a technocracy. There is a lot more top-down dominance. There is a lacking of respect for people, particularly at the front line. What advice would you give them?
Well, I think the first thing, like, it's a journey, right? So there's no, with this particular challenge, there's no simple step. But like, if we think about some principles, like the most important decisions need to be informed by the frontline experience, right? And so delegating decision-making close to the front line. So if you've got, I don't know, like take a PMO, right? Or take a finance department, right? Like take a slice of that finance department and push it into that business unit, right? So that they can, do work closer to the front line. The other thing would be, think about the interaction models that you've got going on, right? So, often service teams in the back office just kind of have standard ways of operating. Fill in a form and one day get a result, right? But there's different ways of working together, right? So one is like fill out a form and get a result, but another is like go see each other and spend time with each other and create a joint venture where together you're doing something, right? Like create a new project for a new process or something like that, right? And back office and front office work together on it. And then another one might be just going in bed, right? Like long-term, take your expertise in process improvement and just go live in that department for a while and, just spend 6 months or a year there, right? And then part of the job is to make the improvements, but another part of the job is to deploy that knowledge and experience in how to drive improvements into the organization. So, they're just 3 examples of how you can kind of change the way you interact, which will open up new opportunities for you in the future.
Mm-hmm. I love it. And Greg, I guess like you mentioned in the show, mate, we've got your Everest, which has won global awards for this in software and product development. You've got Haya, which is in white goods and manufacturing and supply chain. I know we've got Berzog, who are in community care. Like there's these examples across every industry now, isn't there, of companies that are achieving insane things in this space.
Yeah, it's just like we're evolving, right? And being more responsive to the environment is necessary, right? I think like developing a technology literacy is also a thing that a lot of industries are lagging in, and just paying attention to making that a capability. So again, don't have your IT department behind forms, like filling in things and maybe doing something well or not, right? Like be closely working together and like looking at innovation, right? It's, if you had another hour, I'd give you another talk on like how to leverage technology better. But
maybe that's a future show.
Yeah, sure. But the principle is like, leverage the knowledge of the front line.
Yeah, bring it down and embed and respect and support at the front line. I love it, Craig. Okay, mate, I appreciate everything you have done and continue to do. Now, I know, mate, that people can get to meet you and connect with you by coming to the last conference that happens and getting part of those communities. And that's where I met you, and I have valued every conversation we've had. So a call out to the last conference, which everyone can just Google on the website to get to. But how else can people reach out to you, mate, and get in contact?
LinkedIn is a great way just get in touch with me. You can always come to our website and email us as well. Like there's a page on the website. Like I'll share a link to you so you can put it in your podcast notes. In fact, like the link I'll share has got our contact details on it, but it's also got some tips and tricks on latest trend in the industry, AI stuff. So how to think about value and again leverage the knowledge and insights of the people closest to the customers. Yeah.
Well, Craig, thank you again, mate. Thanks for everything you have done and continue to do into the future, mate. Really appreciate you helping us create a better future.
Oh, thanks for hosting the podcast. It's always great to talk to you, Brad.
Cheers, Craig. Catch you later, mate. Bye. What a great episode. Remember, you can go to the Enterprise Excellence podcast to download resources that can support in this, links to great videos on Haya, also Henry Mintzberg, to Everest, to the last conference. So head there and get hold of that information. There were two key takeaways for me from this show. The first is the part that leadership and respect for people and building people's capability really played into Craig's example of, really great leadership and the meerkat, a leader really more sticking their head up and maybe prompting someone else to contribute and really drawing out the knowledge and expertise of others rather than being that dominant position. And really that position on real respect for people and getting to zero distance between people and leadership, but also people and the customer in your organization. And Haya is such a great example. And of course, Everest is such a great example. Craig's company, which is received that global award in this space, which is just an amazing achievement. The second key takeaway for me was still the importance of creating the right processes and systems in an organization to support it, which Craig mentioned well as the engineer leader. And he did mention as part of being an engineering style CEO, it is about leading and developing culture at the same time as systems and processes to support it. And I think that combination of leadership and respect for people, plus focusing on the right systems and processes to enable that and get great outcomes for your customer people and your people was such a great discussion. Really enjoyed that. Again, Craig, like I do with every chat that I have with you, thanks for spending the time and thanks for helping our community on the Enterprise Excellence podcast learn and create a better future. So much to look into here, everyone, particularly if your organisation has currently got that real power distance. There's some great stuff here. Look forward to us all learning more. Bye for now.